And I think this will be the last thing I say kind of on the draft process regarding Bo Nix, but it's been a while. I don't know, Cameron, if you can name anybody else off the top of your head when it comes to how they've been talked about like this outside of Bo Nix. But I found it very puzzling to where there were so many people that have had an opinion on Bo Nix to where they say, well, I didn't like his tape 3-4 years ago. And I can't think of any other prospect that's come in to memory where I feel like a lot of people had their opinion on them formed 3, 4, 5 years ago, and they can't shake that. They can't shake that. And I always thought that was pretty odd with Bo Nix, where I think, again, a lot of people who watch a lot of SEC, they're just like, I'll never see Bo Nix, outside of what he did at Auburn. What did you think about all that? Because that was kind of an interesting enigma, I feel like, regarding him.
To a certain degree, it's interesting because, and it's actually occurred to me a few times, and I don't know if I said this on Manely or 5280 before. It may have been Manely, but when you really look at it, there are three quarterbacks, who have roughly had kind of the same story. Like in the sense of, they got better at their last school. And I'm not talking about Caleb Williams. Okay, I'm not talking about Caleb Williams. But Bo Nix, he was a very high level recruit, 5-star dual threat quarterback coming out of high school. Really wanted to play at Auburn, play for his dad's school, and funny. I just realized this when I think back to that documentary. He beat Oregon in a comeback victory. Right. He beat Oregon in a comeback victory, and then is the quarterback for Oregon. So you saw some flashes, but I think that one of the best. Now, I don't think he's this comparison, but I think the best comparisons that I saw for people that were making this is you saw him be Jay Cutler with Auburn and Alex Smith with Oregon. And I don't think he's in any shape or form Alex Smith by any stretch of the imagination. But like he was, the fact that he really grew in his intelligence and just as a player, and understanding that you don't have to. It's like a really good golfer. Don't lose sight of the fact that you had a crappy first shot. You've got 2, 3, 4 more shots to go where you can actually right a lot of that wrong that was your first shot. And I think that Bo Nix really realized that, you know what, that this mistake, I can right that wrong this very next play or this very next drive. I can do I also don't have to rely on just myself. I have a team. I have a team. I have a team that I can rely on. I have a coach that I can fully trust in. And I think that once he finally got all that, you really got a chance to see the full picture, the full outlook of possibly what Bo Nix could be. Mm-hmm. And therein lies the puzzling nature, of course, with Bo as a prospect. The others, of course, a very high-level recruit coming out of high school, commits to Oklahoma, Spencer Rattler. I mean, and to a lesser degree, as a prospect, he goes and he transfers over to South Carolina, and I'm trying not to invade a lot of Huskers stuff into your podcast. I'm not trying personally not to do it.
It's okay. We got a lot of Huskers a part of Broncos country. It's okay.
But he goes and he gets indoctrinated with Satterfield. Marcus Satterfield is the offensive coordinator, and if anybody knows a little bit about Marcus Satterfield, he is very in depth on in huddle offense, like as far as working in huddle with offenses, and I feel like that probably helped him a lot in terms of his development coming from Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley, he's not so much about the in huddle, if you will. Mm-hmm. It's more about the traits and let's see what you can work with, and then let's go win some ball games necessarily. But Rattler, I think to a much lesser degree, you saw him grow. You
Yes.
saw him grow as a player and as specifically as a person.
Yes.
And that's the other side of it with Bo Nix at times. And I'd love the comparison with Rattler and Nix, because the comparison of, well, I don't like what they did for 3 to 4 years ago. Well, Rattler, there was the report that came out on draft. He was like, oh, they hated what he did in high school on the Netflix. It's like, back when I was 18 or 19, I was making really bad decisions also. So it's just like, people grow up, people mature when they get older, and they face adversity. Look at Bo Nix, as I just said. Rattler goes to South Carolina and he performs. So, and Michael Penix is, I think, is a much weirder case in that Indiana was not really a household name by any means. They were kind of slept on in the Big Ten. And they would have a few good games against Ohio State and Michigan, and some of that. So they would have a few good games, and Penix was kind of lost in the sauce a little bit. But where you really saw him grow was with Kalen DeBoer, the offensive coordinator, for 1 year with Indiana. Really kind of get a chance to see where it takes off. Then DeBoer takes off. He leaves for Washington as the head coach. Then Penix follows him, and you really got a chance to see how much of a stride he really was taking. And actually, this is where I think it gets also funny as a draft prospect, because Penix and Nix, I felt like, were being ripped apart for something that was similar to them, because in terms of the offense that they run, the screens, the short passes, and it's like, well, it's not the same necessarily, the offense that Nix is running, but like the passes that Washington had, the wide receivers that's not a knock on Penix. It's just about
3 wide receivers drafted.
They had 3 wide receivers drafted, 3 very good wide receivers, one obviously in the top 10. And so, like, it's about maximizing the talent level at your disposal. And granted, there's parts of the game with Penix that definitely turned you off. And Penix has the higher ceiling in terms of of between he and Nix, but it's the injury history. That's really the thing that really turned you off, and turned myself off, I should say, with Penix. But I just think it's so interesting when you look at the landscape of, it's all about where you grow as a player. And with Bo, if you're consistently growing as a player and you're growing as a prospect, you are only helping your stock. And frankly, for Penix, I know he was taking 8, but it is what it is. He was taking 8. Like, and because of the way he played, so much of what we saw was growth from a lot of these quarterbacks. And there's a reason why a lot of people were pumping the drum of 6 quarterbacks taken in the top 13. And what happened? 6 quarterbacks were taken in the top 13. An unprecedented thing happened because of the fact that we have a quarterback class where in a lot of years, 3, 4, 5 of those quarterbacks are probably going to be taken 1 and 2 respectively.